A billionaire walks into a hospital to sign a donation deal, but instead he locks eyes with a woman from his past, being rushed into the delivery room, about to give birth to twins. He freezes. The timing, the memory, the stormy night they shared nearly a year ago. What happens next? No one, not even the staff, sees coming. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe, hit that like button, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Make sure to watch this video till the end, because in the final moments you'll see the journey from an entirely new perspective. Now, let's jump into the story. Julian Blake checked the time on his smartwatch for the third time in 5 minutes. Everything about him said control: his crisp suit, the sleek briefcase, and the polished shoes that clicked confidently through the lobby of Riverside General Hospital. He wasn't here for a checkup or a family emergency. Julian Blake didn't have time for things like that. The 38-year-old tech billionaire was scheduled to give a donation to the hospital's children's wing. A good photo opportunity for the press, a generous act for the headlines. But something strange was happening today. He felt off. He couldn't explain it. Maybe it was the way the sky looked duller than usual, or the fact that he hadn't slept more than 2 hours the night before. Whatever it was, it pressed on his chest like an invisible weight. As he waited near the reception desk, his assistant, Levi, called. "Julian, the media team is set up on the 5th floor. You're due to speak in 15, Levi said through the phone. "Fine, be there in 10, Julian replied, voice low and distant. Just then a loud cry pierced the hallway, a woman's scream, not of pain exactly, but urgency. It echoed from the far end of the corridor near the maternity ward. Everyone else ignored it. Hospital staff hurried along with their usual business. But Julian turned toward the sound like it had called his name. He moved, almost without thinking, his expensive shoes silent now on the hospital floor. Through the wide glass window of the maternity corridor, he saw her, a woman on a gurney, being rushed into the delivery room. Chestnut brown hair matted, with sweat, her face tense with pain, and then her eyes met his. It hit him like a wave. Naomi Rivera. Julian froze. He hadn't seen her in almost a year, not since that night in San Francisco, after a tech summit. He remembered the laughter, the rooftop view, the storm that had broken over the city. She had taken photos of the lightning with an old camera while they talked about dreams and regrets. She didn't care about his company or his billions. That night, for once, he was just Julian. The memory left a mark, though he had buried it under board meetings and profit margins, and now here she was, clearly in labor. The timing, the timeline. His mind raced. It couldn't be. Could it? Behind him, Levi's voice called again. "Julian? You're going the wrong way." But Julian didn't answer. He sat down hard on a bench outside the delivery room, watching. The doors closed behind Naomi like a wall slamming shut on everything he thought he knew. The media event forgotten. The board meeting canceled. His phone buzzed with a dozen unanswered calls. Julian didn't move. 3 hours passed. The man who once ran the world from a corner office now sat like any other anxious visitor, creased suit, tie loosened, hands shaking slightly in his lap. Finally, a nurse appeared. She smiled kindly. "Twins. 2 healthy baby girls," she said. Julian's heart jumped, but he didn't stand. He couldn't. Not yet. Minutes later, another nurse opened Naomi's door. "She's asking for you." He hadn't expected that. Slowly, he rose and stepped inside. Naomi lay on the bed, pale but beautiful, her hair damp and her arms full, with 2 tiny newborns swaddled in soft pink blankets. The room was quiet, filled only with the soft hum of machines and the deep silence that follows something life-changing. Julian swallowed. His voice broke as he spoke. "Are they mine?" Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Julian, they're yours." He took a step closer, then another. He was used to closing deals worth millions in minutes, yet this felt more terrifying than any contract he had ever signed. I tried to tell you, Naomi said. I called, I emailed. Julian blinked, stunned. I didn't know. Levi told me you... I thought... Naomi looked away. I stopped trying after the third week. I figured you moved on. No, Julian said, barely a whisper. I never knew. Silence stretched between them, filled by the soft breaths of the sleeping twins. Then one of them stirred, her tiny hand flailing in the air. Julian reached out. Naomi gently placed the baby into his arms. She was warm, light. But the feeling was heavy, like someone had handed him the universe in a bundle of blankets. He stared down at the child, his daughter. Her tiny hand grabbed one of his fingers and held tight. His world tilted. And for the first time in his life, Julian Blake didn't feel like running back to his empire. He felt like staying. Julian didn't sleep that night. After leaving Naomi's hospital room, he sat quietly in the visitor's lounge, staring out the rain-speckled window. The city lights flickered below, blurred by the downpour. Every drop on the glass felt like a knock on his heart, soft, steady, and impossible to ignore. Inside, two baby girls, his daughters, slept peacefully in a quiet room down the hall. And Naomi. She was there too, alone, after fighting to do this without him. Julian ran a hand through his hair, guilt pooling in his chest like water collecting in a gutter. He had missed everything. Every kick. Every appointment. Every moment. Because he'd never known. He didn't even have their names yet. At sunrise, he returned to her room, holding 2 cups of tea from the cafeteria. Naomi was awake, cradling, one baby while the other rested in a bassinet beside her. Hey, Julian said gently, not wanting to startle her. Naomi looked up, eyes tired but calm. Morning. I brought chamomile, he offered. I remembered you hate hospital coffee. Small smile flickered on her face. Still better than forgetting I exist. Julian winced. I deserve that. He sat down, unsure if he was allowed to be close. Naomi, why didn't I know? You said you called. I didn't get anything. She shifted the baby to her other arm, her expression unreadable. I called your office. I emailed your assistant, Levi, every time I got the same reply. Mr. Blake is unavailable. Please direct your inquiry elsewhere. I was told I wasn't appropriate for follow-up. Julian's eyes widened. Levi blocked you? Naomi raised her eyebrows. You tell me. Julian stood abruptly and paced the room. He said you never followed up, that it was just a one-time thing. Well, she said softly, it wasn't just a thing for me. He paused. The room felt heavy. I never should have left that morning in San Francisco, he whispered. I told myself it was for the best, that I wasn't ready, but the truth is I was scared. You saw me, not the version the world loves, just me, and I didn't know how to handle it. Naomi looked down at the baby. Neither of us planned this, but when I found out, I wanted to give you the choice. Julian crouched near the bassinet and looked at the sleeping newborn. She had his nose, his chin. What are their names? He asked softly. Naomi hesitated, then replied, This is Mia, and the one you held yesterday. Her name is Ren. Mia and Ren. Julian repeated the names in his mind like a prayer. They're beautiful, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Naomi looked at him carefully. So what now? You going to vanish again? Julian stood, eyes steady. No, I don't want to run anymore, he stepped closer. Naomi, I spent years building a tech empire and convincing myself that was enough, but it wasn't. You know the night I met you again at the summit? That was the first time I'd felt alive in years. You saw the real me and didn't walk away. She stayed silent. I didn't respond because I never saw your messages. Levi, he thought he was protecting me from unnecessary drama. But he crossed a line. Naomi looked down. So what do you want, Julian? To visit them now and then, write a check every month? No. His voice was firm. I want to be here. I want to learn how to be a dad. I want to know them. And you. Naomi looked up, surprised. I've already missed too much, Julian continued. I want to be here for the rest. She stared at him for a long time as if trying to see past his words to the truth behind them. Then she handed Mia to him. Julian froze for a second. You sure? Naomi nodded. Let's see how natural this billionaire is with burping. He chuckled nervously and took the baby. Mia squirmed a little, then settled in his arms. Her warmth calmed something inside him. He held her close and gently patted her back. After a moment, she let out a tiny burp that made both of them laugh. Look at that, Julian said with a grin. Didn't even need a tutorial. Naomi shook her head. Don't get cocky, changing diapers is next. As the rain outside slowed to a soft drizzle, the room grew quiet again. A peace settled between them. Not perfect, not complete, but real. Julian looked at Naomi, then at his daughters. Thank you, he whispered, for raising them, for trying, even when I wasn't there. Naomi looked at him, eyes softer now. Thank me by staying. And in that small, quiet hospital room, something began to heal. Outside the window, the last raindrops slid down the glass. For Julian, they weren't just tears from the sky. They were promises. Promises of growth, of second chances, of a life he had never imagined wanting, but now couldn't imagine losing. The quiet of the hospital was replaced by the hum of luxury as Naomi stepped out of Julian's sleek black SUV and onto the driveway of his countryside villa. It was enormous. White stone walls, perfectly trimmed hedges, tall glass windows that reflected the morning sun. It looked like something from a magazine. A place where chefs wore white hats and maids moved without sound. Naomi tightened her grip on the baby carriers, one in each hand, and stared up at the house. She had agreed to stay here for a while, mostly for the girl's sake. Julian wanted to learn how to be a father, and she wanted to give him that chance, but still, standing here she felt like a stranger. Julian walked around and gently took Wren's carrier. Come in, he said, noticing her hesitation. You don't have to feel like a guest. She gave him a weak smile and followed him, inside. The living room stretched wider than her entire apartment. Art hung on the walls, real art, not prints from department stores. A grand piano sat untouched in one corner. Everything looked expensive and untouched. Beautiful but cold. She set Mia's carrier down gently. It's quiet, she said. Julian nodded. Too quiet. That's why I want you here. Naomi turned to him, unsure. Julian, I'm not like this world. I'm just a nurse. I shop sales, I don't know wines, and I've never even been in a house like this until today. He smiled. Good. This house needs more of you. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed from the hallway. A tall woman in a dark dress appeared. Her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. Sir, she said with a slight nod. Welcome home. Naomi, Julian said, placing a hand gently on her back. This is Clarice. She's worked with my family since I was a kid. Clarice's eyes swept over Naomi, pausing slightly at her worn sneakers and simple jeans. Should I prepare the guest suite? No, Julian replied, catching Naomi's glance. We'll stay in the master suite. We're a family. Clarice didn't flinch, but her polite smile thinned. Later that evening, the girls were asleep in new cribs Julian had ordered that afternoon. Naomi sat outside on the patio, wrapped in a soft blanket, staring at the stars above the quiet hills. Julian joined her, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. You okay? He asked. She shrugged. It's just a lot. This house. Your world. Your people. He looked down. I know. Naomi hesitated before speaking again. You say I belong here, but that housekeeper looked at me like I was stealing the silver. Julian sighed. Clarice sees everyone as a threat until proven otherwise, even my old teachers. She's traditional. Naomi nodded slowly. It's not just her. Julian, your life is big, loud. I'm not. I like small things. Quiet things. This feels like I'm stepping into a movie I wasn't cast in. He leaned forward, serious. Then, let's rewrite the script. She looked at him, surprised. I bought this place because it was beautiful, Julian said. But it never felt like home. Until you walked in today, holding the girls. Naomi stayed quiet, unsure what to say. There's something else I want to show you, he added. He led her down a hallway she hadn't noticed before to a room with wide windows and wooden floors. Inside was a desk, shelves filled with blank journals and markers, and a large bulletin board on the wall. Naomi's mouth fell open. I remembered what you told me that night in San Francisco, Julian said softly, about your dream to write and illustrate children's books. You said you needed space to create, so I made one. She turned slowly, her hand brushing over the desk. You remembered. I never forgot. Naomi felt a lump rise in her throat. Why are you doing all this? Julian stepped closer. Because I don't want you to ever feel like you have to prove you belong. This life, it's not real without you in it. Tears filled her eyes, but she smiled. You're getting good at this whole father-partner thing. He chuckled. Give me time. I'll even learn how to braid hair. She laughed softly. That, I'd like to see. Just then, her phone buzzed. A text from her brother. Call me. Now. Julian noticed her expression shift. Everything okay? Naomi nodded but stood quickly. I should check on the girls. Moments later, while feeding. Mia, she called her brother Carlos. Naomi, he said sharply. I just heard who you're with. She sighed. Carlos, please. Julian Blake? Seriously? The guy who ghosted you and then suddenly shows up in a hospital? Do you even know what you're doing? I know what I saw in him today, she replied. He's not the same man. You have twins now. This isn't just about feelings anymore. Be careful, Naomi. She hung up, her hands shaking. In the hallway, Julian stood, holding Ren, gently bouncing her to sleep. Naomi looked at him. The billionaire, the tech genius, the man who had broken her heart, was now whispering lullabies to a baby wearing a $6 onesie from the clearance bin. Maybe her brother was right. Maybe this was crazy. But maybe, just maybe, some things don't need to make sense to be real. They just need to be true. 1 month later, Julian Blake sat on a soft picnic blanket at the edge of a quiet lake. Sunlight danced across the water, and the breeze carried the sweet scent of pine and fresh grass. It was peaceful here. No reporters, no meetings, no endless ringing of phones. Just birds, wind, and the soft cooing of his daughters. Mia was chewing, on her toes. Ren was trying to eat a leaf. Naomi, laughing, gently pulled the leaf from Ren's curious hand. Looks like someone's ready to explore the world. Julian smiled. They take after their mother. Naomi looked at him with a smirk. You mean they're smart and stubborn? I was going to say brave and beautiful, but sure, he replied, reaching for the baby wipes. Their new life had taken shape slowly, like a photograph developing in gentle light. After the storm of the hospital, the awkward tension of their first days at Julian's home, and the difficult phone calls from Naomi's worried brother, things had started to settle. But this wasn't settling in the usual sense. It was building. They weren't just figuring out how to co-parent twins. They were learning how to live together as a real family. Julian had surprised Naomi with this lake house a few weeks ago. Not as a gift, but as a promise. Unlike his cold mansion, this place was warm. Wooden floors, mismatched furniture, handmade quilts, and shelves lined with books and baby toys. There was even a corner for Naomi's writing and drawing, complete, with a window that caught every sunrise. He didn't ask her to move in, he simply said, I want this to feel like our place, not mine. And she had said yes, not to a ring, not to a contract, but to something far greater. One morning, while Julian made pancakes shaped like stars and ducks, Ren's current obsession, Naomi leaned against the kitchen doorway, watching him. I used to think love meant big moments, she said. Fireworks, grand gestures, fancy dinners. Julian looked over, flipping a crooked duck pancake. You're saying this doesn't count? She grinned. No, I'm saying this counts. More. Later that day, as the girls napped, Julian took a walk through the small garden behind the house. There was a patch of dirt waiting to become something. He found Naomi kneeling in it, planting daisies. Your favorite? He asked. She nodded. Honest flowers. No fancy petals, just real. Julian crouched beside her. Naomi? She turned to him, brushing soil from her gloves. I've been thinking, he began, about the girls, about us, and what kind of future I want for them. Naomi watched him closely. I'm still running a company, but I've hired someone to handle the day-to-day. I don't want to spend their childhood stuck in a boardroom. I want to be here, to see them grow, help them walk, hear them call, need Dad for the first time. Naomi's eyes shimmered. That sounds like a good future. He took a small box from his pocket. Julian, she whispered, surprised. Wait, he said quickly. It's not what you think. She blinked, confused. He opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring, but 2 tiny lockets, each with the initials, M and W engraved. They're not for you, he said, smiling. They're for Mia and Ren. I want them to have something to remind them they were loved from the very beginning. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. But Julian added, there's something I do want to ask you. She wiped her eyes, heart racing. I don't want a big wedding or a fancy ceremony. I just want to wake up next to you every day. Raise our girls together, make pancakes, plant flowers, laugh through the hard parts. That's what forever looks like to me. Naomi stared at him, completely still. Will you be my partner in everything? Julian asked. Not for show, for real. Naomi nodded slowly, then broke into a full smile. Yes. Always yes. 2 weeks later, they held a small gathering by the lake. Just them, the twins, and a few close friends. No white dress, no tuxedo. Naomi wore a soft blue sundress. Julian wore jeans and a clean shirt. Mia wore a sun hat she refused to keep on. Ren wore her father's sunglasses, which swallowed half her face. They stood on the dock, hands joined, the wind gently rustling the trees. Family isn't something you're born into, Julian said, looking at Naomi. Sometimes it's the people who show up, the ones who choose you. Naomi smiled, her voice quiet but certain. And sometimes love finds you when you least expect it, like rain on a clear day. They kissed as their daughters clapped wildly, though mostly because someone nearby was shaking a rattle. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Julian sat on the porch with Ren asleep on his chest, and Mia curled beside Naomi. You ever miss it? Naomi asked softly. The boardrooms, the deals, the spotlight. Julian looked at the sky, then at the tiny hand resting over his heart. No, he said. This is the only deal I've ever made that truly mattered. Naomi reached out and held his hand. And together, they watched the stars rise, knowing this wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of the one they would write together.